What's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you or someone you know? Serious? Please consider subscribing if you enjoy the video. I worked with a girl who casually told the story of someone almost kidnapping her little sister. One day she walked outside to tell her 6-year-old sister to come inside, and her sister was climbing into the open door of a car at the end of the driveway. My co-worker screamed and the car drove off without the sister. When my wife was little, her friend was abducted and murdered. The day prior to the abduction, my wife was riding her bicycle alone and was frightened by a man in a memorable car that was clearly following her. It turns out that it was the same car that the murderer owned. I have a 1.5-year-old daughter now, and the thought of this as she gets older is just so terrifying. Obviously we teach kids not to trust strangers like that, but kids are dumb, you know. What really made me understand as a kid was to be explained that adults who insist I don't ask my parents or tell me that I should keep something secret, especially something that make me uncomfortable, are up to no good. That advice included people I know and trust. They said that adults who love me would not ask me to keep something secret from my parents. That regardless, I should always ask my parents first. This too included adults we knew. They said they wouldn't be upset if I said I had to ask my parents if I could first, and that I was never allowed to do something if I didn't hear it from my parents themselves. I feel that teaching me a danger bell should ring when someone is opposed to me asking my parents was a good way to go about it. We often read that kids do tell strangers they should ask their parents first, but they end up being convinced otherwise. Of course, there was also don't answer stranger when they ask for direction, because they should ask an adult kind of thing, but better teaching your kid to react to any situation, because sometimes they may not realize or remember not to do something. Teach them to get out of the situation and recognize suspicious behaviors that may happen well into the interaction. This happened about 3 years ago or so. I was sitting in the kitchen, and it was around 10 p.m. or so. I heard a really loud thump in the basement. I live alone with 2 dogs, so any sound is somewhat frightening to me. So, as I'm walking down the stairs to the basement, I hear the thumping again, in an oddly rhythmic pattern. I creak open the door into the basement bedroom, and I see my dog is just ramming his head and body into the wall, over and over. I can't explain to you how shockingly unnatural looking it was. It looked like he was controlled or something. I called him over, and he stopped and came upstairs with me. 3 hours later, I hear the thumping again. I get out of bed again. However, when I went down to check it, it was my other dog that was ramming his head into the wall. It was like he was possessed. Scared the cheese out of me. Since then, nothing like that has happened. But what an unexplainable event. Somehow this is the creepiest story yet. I feel like a big part of what makes it so freaky is that it's something so familiar. We love our pets and see them every day, and in some cases even look to them for protection. But to see something you love and rely on as a constant daily presence acting so unnatural and uncanny is just beyond eerie. Definitely gives me the shivers, and I sure hope the pups are okay. Yeah, that's the most perturbing part. If there was ever a home invader, my dogs would probably take a bullet for me, and I for them honestly. But to see them in that state really freaked me out. Haven't experienced anything like that since, thankfully. I'm a biologist that often has to do field work surveying unmaintained private properties in the middle of nowhere. Long story short, we find a body face up in a stream deep in a thickly wooded wetland. The body looked several months old. At least, no clothes, no tools, no shelter, nothing nearby to suggest who he is or how he got there. We couldn't even tell race or gender from what we saw. We call the police and they immediately tell us it's probably the missing person who ditched his car nearby. They apparently searched for weeks with dogs, horses, and ATVs, but didn't find any sign of the guy. All they found was his family car loaded with cash and a handgun. They also tell us he seemed to be running from someone or something, real or imagined, they weren't sure. Apparently the man didn't even close his car door, just ditched it at a rail crossing and took off running into the woods in a tremendous hurry. I find his clothes about 30 yards up the stream bank from where the body was found. His pants were neatly folded and placed on top of his nice brown loafers, underpants and socks on top of those. He placed his glasses atop his socks, very orderly and in a nice pile. His shirt and undershirt were hanging from a tree branch right above those, as if to dry. I mean, the whole thing creeps me out even a year on. But what unsettles me is the fact that he ran from his family, drove several hours from his home, ditched his car, and fought a mile through briars and thick woods only to stop and carefully fold and hang his clothes before meeting his end. I look him up every now and then and still can't find any more info about what happened or why. Sometimes the weirdest shit gets found when bodies are discovered. Studying forensics ATM, and one of our professors is a local coroner and likes to show crime scene photos in class. All that to say, one time, they pulled a guy up who'd drowned in a lake in nothing but his socks, and he had a big lighter poking lengthways out of his mouth. It was so in there that the tip was completely dry and could still light. Never figured out why. Who the frick lit the big that was in the dead guy's mouth? For some reason. I imagined that they didn't take it out first, just lit it while it was still in the dead guy's mouth. I was at my uncle's house in some countryside with my sister and we were playing hide and seek. My uncle went out to buy some food for us. I was hiding downstairs in this weird closet attic thing I found. I heard a little banging noise and got a little spooked. I then chalked it up to a little rat or something and continued to hide. I then heard a snore and a groan. I immediately got out and ran to my sister. We both sat at the door together, crying, until my uncle got home. My uncle just laughed it off and we were relieved. A decade later, an old man's dead body was found when my uncle tried to sell the house. It was revealed he was squatting there for almost a decade and he had written in a notebook how he was going to kill my uncle and keep the home for himself. And I think that would have happened if he didn't die. I've gone through just about every story in this post and I must say this is the creepiest. And I am a very desensitized person. Do you have any more details? My uncle said he has had a bad feeling and to test it, he went on vacation for 2 weeks with a ton of food in his fridge and when he came back there was like 3 oranges and a slice of bread. But since he had bad security and valuables were missing as well, he just thought it was a robbery and that's when he decided to sell the house. A month later the man's dead body was found. Would you mind if I ask how the squatter died? I was midway through a 12-hour road trip alone, driving all my college apartment stuff back to my parents' house. Car was totally overpacked with boxes, a bike, keyboard, and the like. I'm very low on gas, so I pull over to a gas station in the middle of Town, Georgia. Sun is dipping low, and the gas station is empty, just off the side of the main road intersecting the highway. Few cars meander past on that road, but it's a quiet town. As I'm pumping gas, a scraggly thin guy walks up and starts mumbling about asking for the time. I tell him the time and make small talk, but not a word this man said was intelligible. All the while, he's circling the car and commenting on my stuff. But, again, I can't really understand his words too clearly. I make an excuse to duck into the convenience store, which I needed to do anyways. My bike was rattling loose and I wanted a bungee cable to affix it more securely. As I go into the store and search for a cable, I notice Scraggly Man also entered and he's now talking with the clerk of the store. On a scale of 1 to meth, the Scraggly Man was like 8.5, but she's hardly even a 5 on that scale. Much more trustworthy, while something about that guy gave me the creeps. Anyways, I find my cable and as I approach the register, she makes small talk about noting my car overpacked and asked if I was moving somewhere. All the like, she asks about the cable and I explain it's to secure my bike more firmly. She then tells me I should drive my car behind the gas station and they'll help me tie it up tight. Speaking in the plural, implying what I kinda already deduced. She and the man are associates somehow. Again, my car is just outside the window of the shop, in clear view of the main road. She tells me I should drive it behind the building, where nobody could see it, for them to help me tie it up, as though that help couldn't be done in the normal refueling area. At this point, my get the frick out meter is maxing out at 3.4 rungeon, so I thank her, but tell her I'll be okay, and then I practically jog to my car and get in, locking the doors immediately. As I leave, I watch through the window as the woman and man are in a very animated conversation, gesticulating towards my fleeing vehicle. Could I have been paranoidly misreading these people? Because they kinda looked like meth heads. Sure, but making an offer that's sketchy is not a very normal thing to do. You were not misreading anything, man. You should have said okay, I'll drive it around back, then get in the car and get the frick out. If you tell them no, you don't want to, then that would be more likely to lead to them trying something on you. I was thinking the same, but at that moment you're probably following your instinct rather than thinking logical. At least OP made it out safe. Back in the early 90s my sister took my nephew to a playground to play, When they were leaving, she noticed a man approaching her. He was well dressed in a suit and seemed to be driving a beat-up pickup truck. He asked her if she could drive him to the gas station a few blocks up so he could call a tow truck. As his truck had broken down, she told him no, that would make her uncomfortable, but she would gladly stop at the gas station and call the tow truck for him. He started to insist it was only a couple blocks and he was already very late for work. Now feeling very uncomfortable, she said no again. He then got mad, really mad, and yelled at her, "I only wanted you to take me home." She noped right out of there, jumped in the car, backed up quickly, and rolled the window down just enough to say, "Don't worry, I'll call a police officer to help at the gas station," and sped off. She did stop at the gas station, called the police, and returned to the park with a police officer. The guy and his truck were nowhere to be found. If this was in or near upstate New York, my aunt had a very similar story, except the guy wasn't in a suit. He was in work coveralls. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more r/AskReddit content. Be sure to check out our playlist, link in the description below.